Thank you, Mr. President. I'm disappointed to be standing here debating Senate Bill 1, such an important issue that has had such a truncated and false debate and process here in the chamber. It was rushed through committee. It's now being rushed through the floor process. And I think that's indicative of the product we have here in front of us. There's been no real negotiation, and so all we're left with is the posturing. And that's what we see in Senate Bill 1. But even in the short, relatively truncated review that those of us on this side of the aisle have had to actually read the legislation, this important legislation that's going to affect all 10 million of the people in the state, it's obvious that it fails to address the challenge that our citizens have with expensive auto insurance. The bill utterly fails to mandate rate reduction, and we heard a lot about that in the previous speech just before this. I would point out that there's a tremendous amount of trust in this chamber for the insurance companies, that they are going to see lower costs and then pass those lower costs on to our residents. I can tell you from talking to my residents, they don't have the same brimming cup of trust for these insurance companies that have been overcharging them for decades. This bill also fails because it does not require prior authorization of rates. The best states in the country that are doing the best job of holding down auto insurance rates for their citizens require that those rates be justified before they're rolled out to the citizens. This state does not do that. This state allows insurance companies to just set their rates. There's a lot of trust in the market. There's a lot of trust that these insurance companies are just going to do the right thing, even though our citizens know that they haven't been for decades. Also, this bill failed to take action on redlining and discrimination in insurance rates. This bill allows the use of non-driving factors that would allow a situation where a good driver in the wrong zip code is going to pay more than a terrible driver who lives across the street in a better, whiter zip code. And there was an amendment put on the bill that purported to deal with redlining. I would encourage you to read that amendment. If you read that amendment, you'll notice that it says nothing about stopping redlining. It only prevents them from refusing to insure people who live in certain neighborhoods. And the final sentence is that the insurer recognizes those practices to constitute redlining. This amendment requires the insurance companies themselves to blow the whistle on themselves about redlining in order for the amendment to be effective. The amendment to prevent redlining does nothing, and redlining will continue, discrimination will continue in our insurance rates with the passage of Senate Bill 1, meaning that the citizens who need the most relief won't get it. Also, there's a huge giveaway to the insurance companies. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. I haven't heard this resolved yet. At the end of the day, when this MCCA has money left over, what happens to that money? That money gets pocketed by the insurance companies is what happens. So our citizens who've been overpaying rates for MCCA for years, every year the MCCA revises their actual costs to be dramatically lower than their estimated costs every year, year after year. The reason that I'm most opposed to this legislation is because this fails our neighbors who are catastrophically injured. And you might say, sure, it's only 1% of accident victims who are catastrophically injured, but these people have their lives and their families' lives turned upside down. And right now in Michigan, those folks get the kind of attendant care. They get someone to come and help them toilet. They get someone to come and help them get out of bed in the morning. This bill is going to take that away from those catastrophically injured people and their families. It's going to leave their families and Medicaid to care for them. And you all know that our Medicaid budget is a mess. You know that we're not providing the kind of support to our vulnerable citizens that we need to. And now we're going to put more pressure on Medicaid to pick up the freight that we're relieving from these insurance companies. I can't believe this. This is all about foisting the liability of the dramatically injured people from car accidents off of the backs of the insurance companies who have been paid for that and putting it onto the backs of a Medicaid program where people will get worse care and the taxpayers will fund it. So are you ready to tell those families that they can't get the attendant care they need? Are you ready to tell that mother of an injured daughter that they have to quit their job to stay home and make sure that their daughter can get out of bed in the morning or wipe their behind? That's what this is going to do. That's the kind of pain that this is going to bring on our people. And this bill utterly fails to address any of the real problems. And the reason it utterly fails is because there's been no real negotiation on how to fix these problems for our people. It's just been complete trust in the insurers who've sent their message to this chamber. So I leave with this. I urge you all to vote no. This bill is going to mean that insurance companies win and Michigan citizens lose.